I collect my thoughts as new information comes in about the unfolding situation happening in the United States of America. After the pandemic is still ongoing, but then there was a police, which looks like a police killing of George Floyd. This guy, George Floyd, was arrested. Apparently, he was arrested. The arrest was involving a counterfeit $20 bill, and don't even know if he knew it was counterfeit. Well, there's many things going on. Then there was four policemen involved in this thing. The two arresting police officers that were first on the scene were not. But then, regardless, you could just check online. Just type in George Floyd. There's an image of Derek Chauvin, who is the main policeman who's getting most of the angst on this. Was a white policeman, and he had his knee on the back of George Floyd's neck as he was on the ground. And there's this 8-minute video of this, and you see the other three police officers in there. And there's other things in this. But with police, this comes back to my whole thought of what do people think police are? What do people think the state is? What do people expect from these institutions? Is it about the actual laws themselves? Like, if a law is just law, does it matter who is actually doing the law? Or is the law okay? Because if it is this $20 counterfeit bill, I'm just like, wait, what? This whole thing turned out for this. Would it be different if one of the Asian policemen who was the clearly visually Asian policeman who was standing there watching and keeping people away, if that was the one with the knee on the neck? Would it be different if there wasn't already the previous issues of racism that were going around right now with the Ahmaud Arbery thing that is looking to be more questionable than that Central Park thing? Then you tie in the people being at stay at home, and there's so many things going into this. But again, I'm asking, what do people expect from police? What do people think police are supposed to do in general? This is something that I posted back in was this September 22nd in 2016. So this is just for me, just laying down my general idea of, or my general outlook on what police officers are. And it's titled, from my blog Rantathon, it's titled Police Are Enforcement Agents. So I'll come back in a separate video and talk more about the actual, there was something I was thinking about with just racism in the United States of America in general before this actual George Floyd thing came up, and then now I want to just get in more information before I do that. That's just going to be a direct rant where I'm just not even reading off a script or anything. But let me just read this for you, just to get this out there so I can also refer to it later. Enforcement agents. September 20, 2016, Keith Lamont Scott was shot and killed by Officer Brentley Vinson in North Carolina. Force is an issue. A state is, quote, a human community that successfully claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory, end quote. This is from Max Weber in 1918. Objections? It's in our language. Politics, policy, polity, police, all derived from the Greek term polis, which literally meant city. The state is a form of polity. Police do not require a state to exist, but a state almost certainly need employ a police force. It's in the language. Police force. On September 17th, Tareen Crutchner was shot and killed by Officer Betty Shelby in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Several videos of the incident were made public. September 20th, Keith Lamont Scott is shot. No video of the actual incident. The social media reaction was similar to what followed the two deaths of Alton Sterling on July 5, 2016, and Philando Castile on July 6, 2016. Narratives emerged. This is an example from The Root. Keith Lamont Scott, identified as disabled black man shot dead by North Carolina police while reading in a car. A disabled man, Keith Lamont Scott, 43, was fatally shot by Charlotte Mecklenburg, North Carolina officers who were reportedly searching for someone who had outstanding warrants. And this was by Christian West Savali, posted on September 20th, 2016. Disabled and reading? Indefensible. What else was witnessed? One said, cop was white with a bald head. Others, that undercover officer, according to others. Sorry, bad writing there. Which has since been confirmed. Officer Vinson was in plain clothes. A black officer serving under a black police chief, Care Purtney. But somehow the narrative of institutional racism persists. All white people are effing devils. As I write this on September 22nd, 2016, the protests begun in Charlotte turned into rioting and looting that left 16 officers injured and a protester shot. North Carolina is under a state of emergency. Little to no verified information, but people are in the streets. They're killing us. Who is they? Will false, misleading, and inaccurate stories and narratives be walked back? Unlikely, as shown by continued use of the discredited hands up, don't shoot. In the words of Charlotte Mecklenburg, NAACP President, Minister Corinne Mack, quote, "In my mind, and most of the community's mind, it really doesn't matter if he had a gun," end quote. It's in their words. I agree to an extent. Presence of a gun does not equal threat, just as lack of a weapon does not indicate lack of threat. If it isn't the number or manner of the deaths, could it be abused from those they claim should protect? And just a little aside here, this one, I have a series on the Black Lives Matter, my thoughts on it, and I think part of this comes from the whole child abuse situation where you grow up expecting your parents should protect you and then they hit you and there's corporal punishment and all kinds of other abuse, and that's the same thing they transfer over to the police. The police is different because you actually expect the police to protect you in some cases, and that's why I'm reading this, because police are enforcement agents. Now back into this. To many of them, facts don't matter. For those they matter to, here are some that may be of interest. And this is the counted. This is police killed by police. This is people killed by police in the United States of America. This is in 2016. By the time I posted this, I got this from The Guardian. I think the actual thing is still there. I'll double check after I finish reading this. But you can go out and check. Let's just double check here and see if it's still something that's available. Open a new tab. Okay. So as it's opening, let me read this. The U.S. population has over. The U.S. has a population of over 324 million people. So far, 790 have been killed by police. This is a chart from The Guardian, The Counted, People Killed by Police in the United States, which has filters that you can use, including ethnicity, and this is on the chart there. 362 of the people killed were white, 187 were black, 128 Hispanic/Latino, 15 Asian Pacific Islander, 9 Native American, 48 unknown. And now with this one, I'll give another caveat. You have to consider the United States of America, the one-drop rule is used by a lot of people who are racial to racist. A lot of black people will keep the one-drop rule as well and say if anyone was mixed in this one, if you just have half parents or a third, a quarter of your parents or your blood was black, you will be considered in the black thing or in the Hispanic or in the Asian Pacific Islander. So if you're counting like mixed, if they had a separate one for mixed race people, that I don't know what the number would be there. Let's just double check and see if it's still available here. Okay, it's not loading up. Taking some time. I have some internet struggles here. Let's see if we can get back to the actual reading. Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. They counted the people still here. Let's see. It's taking some time with the recording. So yeah, this is killed by United States of America. People killed in 2016. I think it ended up being 1,093. That was in 2016. So I don't know if they're going to update one for the current year or keep this going, but that's still there. You can check it out for yourselves if you want to later on. So back to the things. If they were armed and with that, and with what? Okay, sorry. If they were armed and with what? 586 out of the 790 at this time had some weapon. 353 of this 586 were firearms, and firearms is just guns. By state, totals. California has 115, North Dakota 1, per capita, New Mexico is 21, New Hampshire 1. That one I was going with the highest and the lowest in that kind of sense. So by age, all but 8 people were under 18. That's pretty. It's a pretty considerate thing. Like all but 8 of the people under 18. All but over 18. Okay, yes, all but 8 of the people were under 18. So yeah, here it's showing, so most of the people were over 18. So only 8 of the people were under 18 in this situation. Okay, that would have been quite frightful if it was the other way around. By gender, 747 males, 42 females, 1 unknown. So patriarchy hurts men too. Women are the ones who are persecuted the most in the United States of America. I don't know what goes with that kind of situation there. If there's actual discrepancy between white and black that indicates there is some racism towards black people, then does this discrepancy show that there is sexism towards males? I don't think people would say that. By classification, out of the 790, 735 of them died by gunshot. So 790 in total, not good. Here are some stats about Chicago. Chicago, the place where Juicy Smollett had his little altercation with those uh, MAGA hat wearing robbers of 2 o'clock people at 2 a.m. in the morning in sub-zero temperatures going to Subway and things like that. What has come from that? I think there might be some things still going. Okay, so this is just something saying September to date. This was just in the city of Chicago. In September only, shot and killed 41, shot and wounded 208, total shot 249, total homicides 44. Week in progress. This was from the 18th to the 24th week. Shot and killed 11, shot and wounded 44, total shots 55, total homicides 11. Year to date, shot and killed 487, shot and wounded 2,666, total shot 3,148, total homicides 546. 544. Okay, so right here, just in Chicago, just by the people, shot and killed year to date, compared to the one here, 735 by the police, 487 just in Chicago. I wonder if this counts some of the people who were shot by police, if that's counted in Chicago. But look at those numbers. So here they're calling it 30-day stupidity trend, showing the different kinds of homicides and things like that, where the people were shot. And this is from the site Hey Jackass, illustrating Chicago values. To date, for the month of September, 41 shot and killed in Chicago compared to the 57 shot and killed by the police in the country. None of these 57 were in Chicago, so that was actually accounted for. Unlikely to have heard of one if it had been, as it would be too difficult to separate from the source of the vast majority of deaths. People are starting to see it. This is by Louis Farrakhan, who is he's in the Nation of Islam, who had some criticism for the current U.S. President Barack Obama in regards to Chicago. This was back in 2016, as I mentioned. Quote, he continued, "But I just want to tell you, Mr. President, you're from Chicago, and so am I. I go out to the streets with people. I visited the worst neighborhoods. I talked to the gangs, and while I was out there talking to them, they said, you know, Farrakhan, the president ain't never come. Could you get him to come and look after us? There's your legacy, Mr. President. It's in the streets, with your suffering people, Mr. President. And if you can't go see about them, then don't worry about your legacy." End quote. I disagree with Louis Farrakhan on a lot of things. I disagree with Barack Obama on a lot of things, but there you have it. This is from somebody who should be considered by many people to be solidly in Barack Obama's camp. And I don't think this made Farrakhan not a supporter of Barack Obama. He was just saying, you could do more and more can be done. And I asked this in a recent video I was talking about in the series where I read the post-its from the Union Square metro station about the people who posted things after Donald Trump won his actual term. If people say Barack Obama somehow healed the country of the racism and now it's more racist now, was the healing he did so ineffective that it could just be undone that easily, or did no healing actually happen? Or, people say, oh, the economy was good because it was the result of Barack Obama. They say that when the economy was good before the shutdowns and things like that. Say, oh, don't take credit for that. That was Barack Obama. But then they say, oh, all the negative things from the racism, That is all Donald J. Trump. Like, no, how could that be part of the continued legacy of Barack Obama? And my argument is this is a continued legacy of the state. It's not just Barack Obama. It's not just Donald Trump. It's not just Bill Clinton. It's not just George Bush Jr. It's not just George Bush Sr. Just going back and back. It's not just the United States of America. It's the nature of the state. This is a preferable current state than things that we've had in the past. I've looked at communist places and like, we want to be that, but we wouldn't want to be China. But still, it doesn't mean you can't improve what's going on in the United States of America. Okay, so watch this short about the gun culture in the United States of America. Number one with a bullet. And this, I'm just going to read you, it's part of this. It's from Bill Whittle. You should definitely check it out. I have a link to this actual blog post, and you can check out this video. So here, this was in 2015 data. It's going to be high after this current situation. I was posting this video by Nas, like, got yourself a gun. Woke up this morning and I got myself a gun. There's a lot of people out there who they're just getting robbed. Their businesses and things like that, they're getting assaulted. You have guns. It kind of changes. I saw this one meme talking about, oh, people are picking the wrong places to actually burn and riot at because they're going to these other these private like businesses and things like that. Then the person had the photographs of the White House and the Pentagon and the Congress building. I'm like, yeah, people know well enough that those places have armed guards. They're not going to go there and do that. Okay. World leader for homicides by firearms by 100,000 people is per 100,000 people is Honduras. USA is 18th with 3.43. Source list 73 out of under 95 plus recognized countries. Sorry. Stats for firearm deaths, they include suicides, unintentional, and undetermined deaths. So these ones, with the United States of America, what majority of these deaths would actually be suicides and things like that? It's going to be a lot higher than you actually think. If you actually look at actual homicides where somebody's going out there with a gun, shooting at somebody in an attempt to either defend themselves or just harm that other person, that's one of the lower minorities, probably under 10. A concerning part about this, pointed out in the video above, is how low the number drops when you take out the majority of these, where the majority of these homicides occur. The infamous murder capitals such as Detroit, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Birmingham, and Los Angeles. As previously shared, most of these crime-ridden cities have been mostly under black governance. He posted a different video talking about the different places, looking at Detroit and other places where it was like Detroit back in the 60s or back in the 70s, and then you look at these different cities and things like that after years and years, decades in some cases, of just majority black rule. So you're talking about the mayor, you're talking about the governors, you're talking about the city councils, you're talking about the police forces and things like that, and just look, is it actually doing a lot better? So it's not simply just about taking that out. And you can go out there and talk to Africans, talk to Asians, talk to Europeans, and say, oh, when you have a homogeneous country or you have these different races taken out of there, are you all of a sudden living in a place where the politicians all of a sudden do things in a great, like, sensible way? No, and you'll find out that all these other places also have their own issues. They also have their own politicians that are using the state for negative means in their own actual ways. There's another meme I saw where somebody was posting out and saying, these are amateur looters and these are professional looters. Had the people coming out of Target and things like that in the United States of America during these recent riots. And then they had some politicians, and mixed politicians, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, this Democrat and Republican politicians saying professional looters. I'm like, no, it's illegal looting. It's spontaneous, like planned looting. These are different things, two sides, not even two sides of the same coin. It's just one same ball of just cow dung of these crappy people using force to get things for their own benefit and violating other people's rights. Okay, so look closer at the demographics and you'll find that cities, specifically in the neighborhoods densely populated by minorities, have higher crime rates. This discrepancy is quite glaring in places such as the aforementioned Chicago, where this year's homicides passed the 2015 total of 424 in 8 months. They shoot more and are shot more by them. So here is a graphic right now, and this is a chart from crime enforcement activity of New York City, other data and charts and other crimes. There's a link here. You can actually go to get the document for yourself and read it. Now here it's showing shooting incident, victim, suspect, and arrests of ethnicity. So it's talking about the victims here. You see 20% of the victims, about 20% of the victims are Hispanic. About 70%, around 70 to 80% of the victims, yeah, about 70 something percent of the victims are black. And then the whites are under 3%. Now it seems to be about 5% around there. Now here, when you're talking about this, when people are talking about, oh, there's an attack on white people are being attacked. Some people are saying that they're saying there's violence. No, white people are not being attacked. You're not being attacked. I know the discrepancy between black on white violence is higher, but you're not being attacked. You're still dying at far lower numbers. Now, it's still horrible, but like American Indians, Asians, it's like if Asians started saying, no, they're not being attacked. It's not. Now, Asians, what I'm saying with American Indians and Asians is different because these ones, compared to the percent of their population, it's closer to it. Now, whites are about 60% of the population. So if you're saying there was being attacked, then maybe if he was like 30%, then you could say something like that. And like, yeah, but then this is disproportionately, there's something going on in black communities. Because here are the suspects. Now look at the black community. Look at the amount of suspects here. And I'm also saying, there's a difference, like I'm saying, black people, why are there so many suspects? Why are there so many arrests? When you look here, the white suspects are a lot lower. So white people in general are also being less violent. But then you look at these ones. These normally match. These things match. Because most of the times, if you're being shot by somebody, you're going to be shot by the kind of people you're around. White people normally hang out with white people. Hispanics normally hang out with Hispanics. Blacks with blacks. Asians with Asians. American Indians with American Indians. So natives with natives. So occasionally, if it's going to be violence, it's probably going to be coming from somebody in your community. If your community is one way, that's going to happen. When you have certain cities and certain areas where there's a predominant amount of blacks and whites, and then there's less kind of mixed with these ones, so it's going to seem like there's a lot more because there's a lot more chances that happen. But okay, so anyway, back to the reading. Is one avoidable death too many? Yes. Is there a problem? Several. Is it white supremacy? Republicans? Police hatred of minorities? No, no, and no. Black administrators, mostly democratic governance, and police shootings that reflect the crime rates by ethnicity. Black lives matter, and associated people and elements are a growing cancer. The reasoning is based on flawed premises that have become articles of faith. If they had the intention or capability to be reasonable, they would not be in the streets. Assuming the intended results of these riots and movements was improving the lot of black Americans, minorities, or whatever focus group they choose, was my failure. It is clear that those organizing this are pushing the narratives have no interest in that. If they did, facts would matter. Police are doing what state law enforcement agents do, exercising force until compliance is met and perceived threat is neutralized. For those that do care about reasoning and want to actually do so, thank you for reading or thank you for listening. Until facts matter, no results will be found. And before I go into the other things that are included here, as I said, this was in 2016, so it still happened. We're still seeing different claims of this might be organized by these groups and doing this and this. What's the purpose of this? What are the goals of these people to actually do? I've gone through a few videos, like I said, on this weekend. I don't know if I said in the start, but on this weekend I was busy listening and watching people get fired into space, launched into space, and then I come back. I take time off of all social media on the weekends and just media in general to try to get off the news, and then I come back. And there's all these things of people launching Molotov. People were deciding, I'm going to go out, and instead other people were deciding to go watch people launch Molotov cocktails and bricks. And there's all these things of like, who was planning this? What was planning this? Why are these bricks just there? Why are people doing this? What are they attacking this for? What is the actual reasoning for this? And as I mentioned, most of the people are not doing it for actual reasoning. If the actual events and things that happened back in 2016 were to actually help and secure the environment, has that actually happened? Did that actually help and secure anything? When Donald Trump, whether you want to believe, I don't believe the state is completely necessary involved in actually increasing jobs. I think they can get out of the way and deregulate things and don't actually limit people from actually doing things. I have a separate video talking about monopolies can only exist under states. Explain to me how a monopoly can exist in general if it doesn't have the state monopoly of force to actually enforce the actual rules and regulations that maintain that to be a monopoly in order for that monopoly to keep the profits and prevent other competitors from entering, and then they just bribe the politicians and things like that, enough politicians to get them the reasonable or preferable regulations that maintain their position. So it's easier for the politicians to harvest and loot from these few people in taxation versus trying to go out and loot from the general public that they need all these votes from and things like that. So there's all these things involved with that. What is the process? What has the actual effect of this actual events been in current year? Is it still the same situation? Did it improve the police? Did the police enforcement agents really improve due to these kind of behaviors that were being done at this point? Some person pointed out, another tweet I saw, which made a lot of sense, was just saying, hey, no matter what you think about the actual state and the government or a police state, protests like this is not the way you get reasonable people who are not necessarily as politically engaged to think we should have less police. This is how people start thinking we need more police. I wish people would think this is why we need more personal protection. And as I mentioned with that Nas thing, got yourself a gun. I think we're selling guns and gun owners. Okay, so here's some links. Security is something we all desire. There are other options than this current state-funded and ran police forces. We already employ forms of private security ourselves and we already employ forms to privately secure ourselves and belongings in our daily lives, from passwords on digital platforms to other things. I don't know what to put there. But what would some look like? Here's a link of some potentials. Security in a free society. And this is from the policy. This is, I think it's the policy. This is a website. I think a friend of mine, somebody I met on YouTube. Someone I met on Facebook. Like he runs a site, so it's going to link there for that. More post-related Black Lives Matter. This is my series on Black Lives Matter. More information: The Truth About Keith Scott Shooting by Charlotte Riots by Stéphane Molyneux. Stéphane Molyneux has some good videos. He's helped me a lot in my life, but he just had a take on this current situation where he's talking about he actually died. The George Floyd actually died from complications and things like that, health complications rather than the actual kneeling. I wouldn't say the actual kneeling was the primary thing that killed him. Like, you didn't see him die right there, but the kneeling was a contributing factor. Now, this is interesting in the current pandemic stage where we have a situation where some people have comorbidities, have certain situations in their life, and then they go into they get the coronavirus, they get the COVID-19 or whatever, and then that coronavirus gets them in a really compromised state and then hurts them. We talked about different things. I've talked about this thing like an obesity thing. Part of the reason I'm trying to improve my health, both physical and mental, is because life has certain challenges. The police in this situation, I think, to me, it's clear they overreached. They might have been following the actual laws and rules that they have as enforcement agents, because that whole kneeling on the neck thing, subduing somebody, was actually by the book, I think. I don't think they were going over and beyond. But anyway, so even if I'm talking about just regular challenges that happen. You're just walking around, accidents happen, somebody you care for, like, you lose your job. There's other things that happen that stress on you. And if you have these other things, if you're not in your physical, trying to be at your physical best or as close to your physical best as you can be, mental best, then some of these things adding to your life can actually harm you. So yes, there could be some extenuating circumstances to why George Floyd was more likely to die from being put in this situation. Maybe he was a smoker, maybe he was this, maybe he was that. Doesn't matter. If he hadn't been arrested for supposedly a $20 counterfeit bill that he may or may not have known was counterfeit, but even if he did, I think 3 cops kneeling on you and all these things, even if you're resisting, there's all these things that are going into it. But that was a central contributing factor to him dying. So that take by Stéphane Molyneux, he's getting ripped for it, and but that's what happens when you're in a public figure like that. And sometimes he's on point, sometimes I disagree with him. This is one point I'm like, okay, no. I have to see. Maybe you'll post the truth about it, and that might have some more information. Like I said, I'm waiting for information coming in. So update. This is an update on that. I don't know how much longer after I post this. So Officer Betty Shelby has been charged with manslaughter for shooting Terrence Crutcher by the district attorney. Protests coverage from the Daily Mail. War zone in Charlotte. White man begs for mercy as he's beaten while a reporter is nearly dragged into a fire by rioters as police are told to stay home from work after police shooting of black father. There's different things in the United States of America. The other three police that were involved in these things have also been fired. They're also going to be charged for abetting and manslaughter. They're hitting off. They've left their homes in Minneapolis, and they were for different. Like I said, I think two of them were Asian. The main cop, I'm forgetting his name right now. He's married to an Asian a woman of Oriental ethnicity. You can still be racist. I'm personally not thinking this is. I still don't have enough evidence to think this is a racially motivated thing. I like. I'll get into this later. But do you think if this was a white man, this wouldn't have happened? If the police officers were shoved around, if it was like, and I'm not saying just because he married an Asian woman doesn't mean he can't be racist towards black people. He could be somebody who thinks Asians are superior to whites and blacks, or like there's some kind of like strata, or there's a progressive stack, how they have that thing, the pyramid, but there's a racialistic stack where like Asians might be on the top. That's why he picked her over a white woman. He definitely wouldn't even consider her a black woman. There could be all these other things. You could also be personally entirely racist, but not every single action you do based off of somebody of another race means it's a racist thing. And we've seen a lot of this. There's been a lot of horrific violence out there. Protesters beating up people defending their businesses, or people trying to like secure the places. There's also been amazing stories of seeing both people of all sorts of races sitting there and protecting businesses that in some cases they're not involved with, protecting other people that in some cases they're not related to. They just come and they find this place is being terrorized. We're going to come here and stand with our guns and protect. I've seen some with like some black men standing in front of a riot police officer that had been broken away from the rest of his squad, and they were protecting him from people. And there's things like that. I've also seen one where there's again mixed information. Somebody posts this where there's somebody who was a store owner I think it was in Dallas. Supposedly he was beaten up, was in taken critical condition. I think he's doing better now, but he was posted, he was murdered by this mob. And it turns out murdered by this mobs were trying to defend his store. Then it's like, oh no, it turns out he's alive. Then somebody posts in there, look at the entire video. He was actually chasing them with a sword and things like this before. Then it's like, look at more video. They actually end up throwing rocks and attacking him first by his store. Then he got the sword and tried to like chase them off. And then when he was chasing them off, they eventually mobbed up on him and beat him up on the street. So these are things. We're just reacting on things without the information actually coming out. It's getting these reactions. If you see something from one angle, you're going to get a different point of view. More from CNN via Breitbart. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Fraternal Order of Police. Spokesman, 70% of arrested rioters have out-of-state IDs. Now, this happens. This happens because they get call-outs. We're going to have a protest. We're going to have an event here and there. When I was in the United States of America, there was times when I was more involved with going to protests, have a separate channel where I was posting that. I've posted some on this channel right now, the Trump Train to Magaland series. You're going to see different ones. Where there were some cases where I was like getting more and more into it, where it was in New York City at the time. Around New York City, I would be going to the events. I would go to the actual ones there. And then it was like, there's going to be one in Boston. And I was going to go with some friends and ended up not going. I went down to D.C. for the inauguration march, and then for the inauguration and the Women's March after. So people actually do go to different places. Cities in general do have that. Even in some cases, people will move to a city and have out-of-state IDs. But when they have something like this, they will have a thing where they actually invite people in. Now, this happens. This definitely does happen. I don't know if it's 70%. There's been different reports now talking about people coming to different places in different cities and where they've had the riots and the events and things like that. But if you're living in the suburbs, if you're living like outside, some of these cities are on state borders and things like that. So they do attract people from different places. And there's all these questions. Are there police officers in there, undercover police officers starting to set things up? Is it Antifa? Is it white supremacists? Is it all this? Again, a lot of information coming out. When you react without getting information, this is what happens. More in Breitbart. Charlotte curfew ends after largely peaceful protest night. I think this will peter out. It's this, like I said, talked about. It's a mix of many different things with the current pandemic, with the stress from that, a lot of people losing jobs. Even George Floyd apparently had lost his job. He had been laid off due to part of this coronavirus shutdowns and things like that. How would it have been different if it wasn't shut down? If he was still working, would he still be in that location? Would all these things? There's so many questions. There's so many things we don't know out there. So all these reactions. But my main point of reading this and posting this, talking about police are enforcement agents, is this is what I think of police agents in general. I'm not saying they're all bad. That's why I posted this recent video talking about the laws that people are demanding currently during the pandemic, saying we need to shut this down, we need to do this, we need to do that. Would they be okay with them if they're enforced by a foreign government? Do they think our police forces or the people that I think will enforce this are somehow better human beings so they will enforce it in the right way? Or can these laws, can these rules, this justice, can it actually be carried out in an even way, regardless of who actually does it, if you just follow the letter of the law? Does that actually work? And I think in many cases you'll find that to not be quite the case. Another thing with the protests, a lot of people were talking about shutdowns. We need to have shutdown this, we need to shut down that. CNN was talking about all these things. Then someone was talking about how current year it is that CNN was covering a CNN in Atlanta being actually invaded by some rioters and things like that. It's so current here. But anyway, they were talking about these things. They're saying, oh, we're going to have these people who are protesting the shutdown. They're going to spread the virus. They shouldn't be given any actual medical aid. If they get ill from having the coronavirus, they shouldn't get medical attention. Now, are those people going to say the same thing? Is there going to be supposedly a spike of infections of coronavirus spread after these global, now they're moving to Europe and things like this, after these nationwide protests? Are we going to see in the places where they have that, is all of a sudden going to be a spike? And now should those people be allowed to, should those people go to the hospitals and get their health care? They're putting other people in danger. So many questions, but again, I'm talking about most problems in the world exist because of how you define things, not because of what things actually are. Police are what police are. What the police were doing there was probably, in this George Floyd incident, was probably following close to the letter of the actual law that the police have. But as enforcement agents, they're not there to necessarily protect private property. They're there to enforce the public laws, the public sector laws. They are there to enforce the laws of the state. If you, as a private person, do not pay your taxes, they're the people who are going to come and take your private property away, take your private freedom away, and put you in a jail. They are enforcement agents. They're enforcing the laws that the public sector actually has, enforcing the laws that the state has. They're not there for private protection. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a reason to have private security forces. There's an entire different thing, an entire different field there, and I think we should look into some of those things. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like, share, subscribe. There's links below to our merchandise store as well. I've been thinking about different ideas coming out of this. I think there will be some merch specifically related to these kind of topics and things like that. But I think just a simple one, just saying police are enforcement agents, would be a simple shirt that I need to get up as soon as possible. So till next time, as I mentioned, I'm going to have a separate video talking about the racism situation because I was mulling this around in my mind. I was feeling a rant coming. I was thinking I could do it something short and sweet, but then now these other events have happened. It might turn out to be a longer rant, and I'll get that going here soon. So till next time, goodbye.